Oh, a subject near and dear to our hearts, Jonathan.
We love it.
Nitro finishes.
Whew. Gets me excited. Just saying nitro.
What do you guys think out there? So we're going to talk about the three big boys. Obviously, Gibson, Fender, and PRS.
That's them.
We love guitar details and specs and finishes on guitars. Are probably
Smells.
Yeah, smells. I mean, we don't even get into smells. I mean, that's the winner already. If we're just talking about smells, Gibson wins immediately.
They do.
But we're going to break them down, go through Gibson, we're going to go through Fender, we're going to talk about PRS and what they're using and how it might affect your purchasing decisions and what you might like better or what you might like least. So let's go ahead and start with Gibson.
Let's do it.
So you worked at Gibson.
I did.
Were you in the finish department at all?
No, I was in final assembly, but I was next to the finish department, sort of.
So that would explain maybe some of the strange colorations on your face. And
My strange, yes.
well, because finish work is extremely dangerous.
Yep, those
And,
guys.
and they still do it a lot, pretty much by hand at Gibson, correct?
They do.
It's crazy. So pretty much at Gibson too is like it's 100% is nitro.
Everything USA, everything Gibson USA and up. So
Nitrocellulose lacquer is what we're talking
So
about.
if it says Gibson, it is a nitro guitar.
Which is pretty amazing.
It is.
This is the only of the major manufacturers. If it says Gibson, it's a nitro, and I think that's impressive. Okay, let's talk about high gloss nitro.
I think that's your sort of, if you see the regular Gibson USA stuff, like your standards, all that kind of stuff, that's your high gloss finish, right?
Yes.
Yep.
So with your high gloss nitro finish, that's pretty much the run of the mill nitro finish.
The run of the mill, yeah.
For Gibson, no, it's what you get on all your Les Paul standards, traditionals, even down like your SGs and your basic 335. Everything's going to get this.
Everything's going to get that. It's lots of thin coats, several thin coats. I know that they do buff it so that it's shiny, you know,
Yes.
obviously in the name, high gloss nitro. But it's going to look more like a brand new, it is a brand new guitar. It's going to look like a modern brand new guitar.
And just like a bullet point on nitro in general is like, why would we use this over poly? And so poly is a very thick coating. It doesn't breathe really at all. Nitro is everlastingly breathing and sort of evolving as you play it. Even this high gloss nitro, it's going to continually sort of shed itself from the guitar over years until eventually there's a thin, you're going to get close to that wood. It's soaked into the wood, but that's the process. It allows the tone of the wood to breathe a little bit more, supposedly having a more organic sound to the instrument.
Resonance. More resonance.
I know, I choose organic because I like to use words that don't
Organic resonance.
actually make sense. But no, my whole philosophy with guitars is they were trees learning how to be instruments,
Right.
and it takes a long time sometimes. And and then poly. Why would I want a poly on a guitar versus this vintage VOS or the high gloss? Because I want to protect it
You want it to look the same
forever, and
50 years from now.
we'll get in that later. So let's talk about the next phase of finishing.
VOS.
What does that mean?
So it is starts out relatively the same, like several thin
Jonathan,
coats.
what does VOS mean?
It means vintage original spec.
Just in case, because it's
Sorry.
confusing. You hear like NOS, VOS, all these like weird words. VOS, vintage original spec. Continue. Sorry, John.
But so this one's not going to be high gloss. It's going to look sort of like a faded, almost like you can feel it, sort of like an effect to the finish.
Okay. And I love VOS finish.
I like VOS a lot too.
It starts coming in the Gibson custom shop.
Right.
You're not really going to see this on your traditional runs and your standards, your US built, until you enter the custom shop. It almost looks a little bit just aged.
It does.
We're not getting to relics at all right now, but just aged. It's you're going to see these on like some of the most popular custom shop reissue models, and it's hugely popular in the custom shop right now.
And
Love
it just looks fantastic. I dig it.
True historic vintage gloss.
True historic.
Now this is they did this exactly how they did in the 50s, without the cancer. Is the idea, because they actually wear protective clothing and they do like multiple thin coats. Do they let this dry?
Totally dries in between every coat. So it's time consuming.
And that's people are like, oh, why don't they just spray it and you're done? No, it takes a long time to dry.
And then they wet sand it in between.
That's what I was gonna say. It's a wet sanding.
When I was a kid, my dad would paint cars, and little Jonathan would like stand there in his little redneck like underoos and like wet sand like fenders on these old cars.
Oh my goodness.
Like I'd have a little water hose and a piece of sandpaper, if you can imagine me.
Well, and this process is repeated over and over again.
Over and over. Well, which is super cool, super authentic. Takes a long time.
And you're getting a very thin, a very breathable, or a very resonant, or I would say organic sound sound from the instrument. And this is where you're getting into some of the historic reissues and some of the more high-end pieces. We're getting close to getting to the stuff that Mr. Murphy might be making over at Gibson. Let's move on to our next finish. The true historic aged finish.
Same as the one we just talked about.
Yes.
Then aged.
Aged. Now this is not relics.
Not beat up, not dinged up.
Right.
Just aged.
And so you are gonna. It's the same exact process. It's a slight a slight coloring of the finish possibly. As you notice with Les Pauls, they age. There's a yellowing to that nitrocellulose. It's gorgeous. Unless you're like new to guitar and you're like, why does that guitar look kind of muddy now? It started off white, and now it's like muddy.
Yeah, it's kind of like
Like we do that with experience with like sort of low end guitars with like these finishes. We like to take them out and put them in the sun and watch how it splotches.
See what happens.
So we have one like we've done that with up front. It's like I think it's an Eastman that we did and we had it refinned and we just like what's going to do with this, and it turned all sorts of crazy dog colors.
Good things.
No, it did not do good things.
But these are supposed to look like they're sort of like lovingly played and babied for like 50 years.
Right now, and if you get to the Murphy Labs, which is one of like the coolest, most exciting parts of the Gibson custom shop right now, I think that's when they do the insanely accurate relicing, where like Mr. Professor Murphy like has his razor blade. They have like heating and cooling processes, and these all sorts of chemicals, and I mean to watch them relic like a bridge is insane. Like how much time it takes. That is not part of the finish work, but that will often go with the true historic aged finish is done in the Murphy Labs on almost every piece. So that pretty much covers Gibson.
I would say so.
And the thing we mentioned earlier, the smell.
Oh, there's something about when you open that case and the guitar is like warm in there, and
well, it's a combination of like the glue they use to keep the felt in the cases, which used to be horrible and it all turned mildewy back in the 60s and 50s, and it's nasty. It's the worst smell ever now. But the smell of that mixed with their nitro finish,
it's kind of amazing.
Candy.
It is like
it's
candy.
but a good candy. I'm not a huge candy guy.
They actually talked about this the other day on the Anderson's video. Danish Pete and the Captain were saying that like it should be a cologne.
Who's that? I'm kidding. That would be funny. Like
they were like they should just sell it like hide glue and nitro finish.
It would just make like guitar players attracted to each other. It would be very bad for the heterosexual community out there because it'd be all like the guys like, I love the smell of man, John. Love you right now.
What is that? What are you doing?
It'd be awesome. Let's talk about one of my favorite guitars in the world, Fender. Woo. Gibson Junkie, but I love me some Fenders, and I love that they are all over the place with their finishes too. So in general,
hard to beat.
Almost every Fender like the normal human can buy has a poly finish on it.
Poly.
It's like until we enter into until we enter the custom shop. But Fender has started putting that nitrocellulose onto a few of their pieces. You're like, well, which ones?
People spoke. Well, so the American Originals.
That's one of our favorite lines that Fender makes.
I think they're underappreciated.
They're underappreciated. They've not sold as well as like the Ultra sells outrageously well, which is a poly finish.
Right.
Where the American Original is about the same price, and it has a nitrocellulose lacquer finish.
Much more vintage
and
vibe.
Custom shop pickups. It is the unsung hero for around like 2K. You're getting a custom shop guitar.
American Original.
But then Fender threw this curveball at us this year.
Venteras.
What?
Venteras. Road-worn Venteras.
A Mexican-built Fender is going to have a nitrocellulose lacquer.
That's right. And they've done a few special runs before.
Right.
But nothing that like was a production model.
Yeah, that we're like that's like we saw like the sort of fall release of what's coming out. Like when I saw like beat up Venteras, like custom shop looking things at $1,000 price range, that sort of got my brain excited.
Yes.
I love that idea.
I'm still excited.
Now, what Fender does with they do multiple sort of nitrocellulose lacquers. Like, let's get into the custom shop now. That's where that mainly lives. You're pretty much all your custom shops, unless you have like a real not artisan, but an artsy piece with like a fancy painting done by one of the great artists that like Todd Krause will bring them in. John Cruz had a bunch of the art sort of work. I've seen a few others. They'll do a poly coat on that, and then sometimes they even do like a nitrocellulose on top of that. They do another coat of like another painting. But they also have the flash coat finish,
right?
Which is a special.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, flash coat's really cool. It costs extra even within the custom shop. You know, you're paying a lot, then you're paying a few $100s more for this. It's a different compound mix, and it will also they just do a little bit of a spray on there. So this guitar you can get it ordered NOS or relic, which means like not beat up at all. Right, came out of the factory, but it will
stock.
But it will start relicing possibly on its way to you, which is really cool.
It's kind of insane, but in the best way possible.
Like, that's sort of like my fantasy. Like if I could just build lots of custom shops for myself, I'd get flash coat
and new old stock them, and then just
maybe closet class at the hardware. I do like the hardware a little bit aged.
Yeah.
But it's an amazing compound they came up with. I remember Wildwood Guitars sort of like launched it with the Relic Ready that they did a couple years ago, I think now. I always give them shout outs because they're awesome. And now they have like a super like ultra light guitar. So if you're like online, you're like, hey, I want my guitar to weigh less than 6 pounds. They can do that for you. It's really expensive.
Go.
They've come up with this wood. It's not alder or ash, but they have a wood kind. It's a whole different thing. Great shop. Check them out. Steve, thanks. But that's kind of Fender in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And again, I love Fender Custom Shop. I think
we both love Fender Custom Shop.
Bang for your buck, they do some of the best work.
It's just so. I just want to touch it. You know what I mean? Like
And you get in like in the ones that are like beat to living sin that you just built yesterday. It feels like you're pulling something out of the '60s or the '50s, and it plays amazingly. It resonates.
I was just gonna say when you play them, and you just feel like
it's
almost
different.
like you're playing an acoustic instrument. You know, in a solid body guitar. They don't smell as good as Gibsons.
They do not smell as good.
There's something about the 3D look and vibe of them that's just.
But nothing smells as good as a Gibson.
Nothing smells as good as a Gibson.
Like my wife doesn't smell as good as a Gibson.
No.
You know.
I smelled your wife.
Your wife smells decent. Now PRS, the other guitar that we all love, and is perhaps the most beautiful of like if you were not a guitar player and you like put a Strat, a Les Paul, and a PRS, like all like custom shops, you're like, okay, the PRS is the prettiest guitar.
Right.
For some reason, Fender and Gibson has that historic legacy.
Yep.
But PRS is getting there at 85. It's a weird time to start, I guess, the time of Wham. But I love George Michael's. Shush. But no, that PRS then they were notoriously they've always used poly until recently on all of their pieces because when you buy a PRS, you want that finish to look that way forever.
Of course, that's part of the allure of that, right?
I mean, they have the best looking woods. Like whenever we see like an artsy Fender custom shop, like, oh, it's like a PRS Fender. Like we say that all the time. It's like when they have like the weird series they come out with, like
the rarities.
Yeah, rarities are like the paranormal,
all that stuff.
Bandango Part 3.
Sure.
It's like that's a PRS in a Telecaster shape.
Right.
Because like PRS is synonymous with the best looking tops, and they want to protect that.
Yes.
Right. I think.
You would think.
I think. So tell me more about like what's going on. Have you heard about the new cab finish? Or?
I have heard about it, and it sounds to me sort of like they're getting into that best of both worlds territory.
Yeah. So they've started doing They're really focused on putting a very thin coat, but to maintain a hardness, so it's clear, it's hard, and it doesn't have the stickiness that is often associated. Because like if you get a brand new Gibson Les Paul or a Fender, it's tacky. Yes, not tacky like how we dress, but like it's sticky, and often our guys will get like a really thin sandpaper,
steel wool or something.
Yeah, white, which is I can't do that. I can't bring myself to do that. It freaks me out. But they'll take it down. But this is supposed to, for PRSs now, and they just started doing this new one in 2020, which is really exciting. And we've seen them. The wood, the depth of it is more transparent. It looks like you're seeing little mountain ravines, and it's just like a flat piece of wood. And I don't understand. I've watched them do I've watched them do the color. They put it on there, and then they put the finish on there. Like, where did it? It doesn't look. I don't get it.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, but so it's a very hard finish, and it's a very thin finish compared to what they did. And we're excited to see how it does age a little bit. They don't do relics.
It's kind of weird, right? Because with a Fender, I want it to, like I do. I mean, I know there are people out there who do not want their Fenders to age. I want my Fenders to look 50 years old. I think it's awesome.
And even my Gibsons, I like.
Yes, absolutely.
But I don't know. Like I kind of want my PRS to look 50 years old too. And
it could be cool.
And so I'm excited with the new finish to see sort of how that evolves. I know within the private stock world, they can do like the brushed hardware, and they can sort of age that. They're not going to relic the guitar. That's not their thing. But you can do it aftermarket, and you can also just let it happen by playing the bejesus out of it, and or just rubbing your hand. Like I have one guitar. I think it's that Jazz Master back there. I remember I'd be playing, watching YouTube videos. I'd be watching Andertons or something. Like, oh, Danish Pete's up there again. How do you fix his hair today? Okay, that's great. And then I'd just be rubbing like the top. I know it's weird. Like my wife, like, what are you doing? I'm like rubbing the heel of the guitar to make it age.
It's like the people who put their guitars in front of speakers so they really resonate. Yeah, no.
Because I played my guitars too much.
Yeah.
But yeah. So with PRS's new finish, we're very excited to see how this sort of fits in the marketplace, and how it ages as well. Because that's like a big thing with all these guitars. It's fun to watch the transition from day 1 to day 2000, which is where your transition really happens. And PRS is known as the most gorgeous guitar. Let's see if they can keep. They always come. They innovate every day. So let's see
see what happens.
And we're curious to see what you think would be your best fit. I mean, so what do you prefer?
God, it's tough. I think I have to pick the Fender though.
You prefer the Fender?
I think there's just something about the way the Fender looks, and I mean, obviously I have the Fenders, and I still, even after owning some of these guitars, like my Telly I've owned for 8 years, and I still, when I open it up, I'm just like, oh, I just want to rub it. I want to rub the chicken.
That's funny. That's really funny. And I'm shocked, like with PRS in general, like I can tell a poly finish usually, but the way they did their poly finishes, I can't.
Oh, they're really, yeah.
I wouldn't like be like, oh, this is poly. It's like, I'm not going to play it. With Fender and Gibson, I get kind of snooty. I'm like, well, if it's poly, I don't want it as much. Even though I was doing like a demo for a guy with one of the Mexican-built Player Series. And I was like, this guitar is awesome. Like a Player Series Telly. I was like, this thing crushes. Why am I playing this custom shop or this vintage piece now?
I know. Because that's cool, Jake.
I don't know. I'm going to give Gibson the points because of the smell, though.
The smell. I mean, they are very close in my book.
So if just as a side project, if you're at a guitar shop and you can go in, they have Gibsons in their cases. Just you don't have to buy one. Just ask to open and smell them.
It's just
like
a little
the
peek.
Guitar in there, like let it
Take
sit
a
for
whiff.
10 minutes, or even better yet, go buy one online or something, or call us up or call somebody and get a Gibson.
It smells so good.
Smell it. Make the cologne. You'll make a fortune with 50-year-old men.
If you come in our shop and smell the guitars, we won't think you're weird. We'll understand.
No, people know that we do that. So let us know your experiences with the guitars. Hopefully this has been a little bit informative. We've had fun talking about it.
It has been fun. It's a fun subject.
Sorry if I talked over you a little bit. I got excited about finishes.
It's very exciting.
I know. It's weird to be excited about. It's like when you get your hardwood floors done. It's like, I want the satin finish. And like guitars, it's the same. It's more. It's this little thing. You spend way more money on your floors at your house, right? Theoretically, if you ever did. Well, you would, but like the guitar, I mean, well, maybe you wouldn't. These guitars are really expensive.
I don't know. I was going to say.
Private stock. Never mind. I'm getting one. I already picked out my woods. I'm getting it. My wife doesn't know yet. Or check out CME's.
Now she might.
Check out Chicago Music Exchange's website for PRS private stock stuff. Like they have the wood blanks, the neck blanks, and like just the blocks. And you can buy that guitar for $10,000 today, and it's just a block of wood, and they will build it, and you can still help spec it out. Awesome how they did that. I'm totally riffing off of that later. Sorry,
we should do that.
We're doing that later.
We're doing it.
We're doing it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I'm gonna say thanks to our corporate sponsors. Just kidding. We don't have any. We just do this ourselves because we're not beholden to anybody, really, unfortunately. But thanks, Gibson, Fender, and PRS for making cool guitars and letting us sell them.
We appreciate that and letting us sell them.
Yeah. What else should people do?
They should click like and subscribe. They should hit the bell so they see all of our wonderful videos about wonderfully informative things like this. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Jonathan.